the past 3 videos of this 4-part series have been about the state of physician recruiting and how we approach recruiting as a firm. But enough about what we think. We talk to physicians every day and we wanted to share with you what we hear from them in regard to the recruiting process. Disclaimer, this is not an exhaustive list, the opinions of every physician, nor the actions of every administrator. I have a few responses here, and seeing how Tim has been in the recruiting industry for 15 years, what better resource to provide some insight around these? I can think of none.
I can think of so many better resources, but we'll give this a shot. So.
Tim, here's the first one. The realtor was spectacular, really made us feel welcome.
Absolutely. So this is I really like this one. This is feedback from candidates it's surprising how often the experience on that community tour with that community representative or that realtor can sort of make or break whether they're interested in the job or not. It really comes down to you're not present for the conversations you're not present for. So once an organization sort of releases that candidate onto the community tour, that's 2 hours in the car with somebody else that might not be part of your organization. You better make sure they're on message. And if they are and that experience is positive, it's not surprising that candidates have said that that was one of the reasons they decided to take a job.
Okay, awesome. I accepted the job. We were excited to make the move until we received the formal agreement.
Formal agreement, that's a scary word. And the process back and forth can be a bit daunting sometimes because really we're talking about the business side and it's about the experience and the positivity and wanting to work with somebody, but you always got to get the contract in place. Right. The reality is the contract is typically what the contract is. There are organizations with contracts that are weighted toward the organization, those that are weighted more favorably to the candidate, and there are those that are balanced. The reality is you probably can't change your agreement too much, so what you want to do is you want to get ahead of it. It's easier to prevent a fire than to put it out, right? So some of the organizations we work with have had a lot of success with sort of carving out time during the interview, maybe an hour, 90 minutes, depending on how long the contract is, with CMO, VPMA, maybe the director of recruiting, and actually discuss the contract, a boilerplate. Go through it. It's not scary. If the candidate sees it, they're more apt to sign it even, and really point out those clauses that have given them problems in the past with candidates because they know what candidates don't like because they've gotten feedback before. Right. Here's why it's in here. Here's what everyone else has signed. We're not going to be able to change it. Let's get comfortable with it, then let's move on. You're going to find better outcomes if you get ahead of it than try to fix it on the back end and hope that maybe they won't notice.
Right. Okay. The other providers could not have been less interested in my visit.
So that's really comes down to we've got a failure to communicate, right? So you're not ready to recruit if you don't have everybody on board to recruit. Or maybe you are, but you need to prepare a candidate for the potential negative conversation they might have. It's a reality of sort of the interview process, right? So you've got sort of 2 options. Either only let them encounter those that are going to speak positively about the organization, but a lot of places want them to hear the full story. And the reality is you might have a senior provider, or politically you need to put somebody in the interview process because it's part of their practice. Well, if you know they're going to go negative because they have a history of always going negative with a candidate on the interview, or maybe not specifically going negative, but they share things that are their gripes, it might not be the gripes of the staff, prepare a candidate for it on the front end. A good recruiter can do that, or anything you can do to sort of help a candidate understand and sort of set the expectations can help you create a positive outcome.
Okay. Everyone I met during the interview was surprised to meet me as if they didn't even know I was visiting.
Surprising how often this happens. The reality is more often than not, the major players know that a candidate's coming on site. Our point of contact if they're working with a firm, the CEO, the CMO, maybe the head of the group or the medical director of that particular service line. But oftentimes we forget to communicate that to the ancillary staff and the people they'll just be encountering throughout the interview process. You do a hospital tour, how many people do you encounter? So if you can communicate with your organization, maybe it starts with the person working the front desk when they walk into that lobby. It's like, oh, hey, Dr. Jones, we're expecting you. So-and-so will be down to meet you soon. We're so excited for you to be here. And you can have that communication go throughout the entire process where people know who they are, they come up to them and they know their name, they know that they were coming, they're excited about an interview being on site. It's amazing how much more positive that experience is for a candidate. It really comes down to those positive experiences.
The opening I was presented was nothing like the position I interviewed for or was offered.
We get that a lot as a recruiting firm, obviously. In fact, we get that a lot from candidates saying, well, I've been told this before, and it wasn't how it was when I got on site to interview. It's unfortunate that that happens. The reality is it doesn't happen a lot with in-house recruiters or recruiters that are employed by the hospital. If anything, they tend to overshare, almost are too honest about certain things that might not be deal breakers one way or another. The reality of the market is this: you've got good players and you've got bad players.
Right.
And if you're working with a third party that is a bad player, you can usually identify them with their whole goal is to get interviews on site. They think their value is just creating candidate generation. And really it's about finding people that want to take the job. And it doesn't behoove anybody to fib to a candidate on the front end.
Right.
You sell your positives, you answer any questions about the negatives honestly, you set expectations appropriately, and you get them on site. There's no such thing as a perfect job. Don't try to pretend your job is perfect. And you'll find yourself once again driving towards better outcomes.
Okay. So the last one, I really appreciated how much attention they paid towards my spouse.
I like this one. This is one of the golden rules of physician recruiting: is focus on the spouse. I don't know about you, but if I was to evaluate an opportunity to relocate my family and take a new job, there's no way I would do it without talking to my wife first.
Nope.
And physicians aren't going to do that either. So they want their spouse involved. And it's surprising how many times we hear from candidates that the spouse was an afterthought, wasn't part of the interview process. One of my best clients, middle of nowhere, 4 hours from anywhere, they won recruiting battles because when a doctor got on site, they had a full itinerary and agenda, but so did the spouse. And they made that a positive experience for the spouse. What you got to realize is the spouse is an influencer, sometimes the primary decision maker, without you really knowing it. So you've got to make sure the interview is set up to be positive for them as well as for the candidate. You're never going to get a doctor take a job if all their spouse sees during the interview is the inside of that hotel room.
Okay, awesome. Well, Tim, thanks for taking your
Absolutely.
time and providing some insight around these questions for us. So we hope you found some value out of these videos. If we can be a resource to you in any way, please reach out. You can find our contact information on our website, adaptivemedicalpartners.com. Thanks and have a great day.